Ethan Cole had lived on the edge of explored space for almost 2 years. His small research outpost sat in a wide valley, surrounded by endless forests and high silver mountains. The nearest human settlement was 3 weeks away by ship. Most days were quiet, filled with routine maintenance and long hours of silence. That night, the silence broke. Ethan was outside in his rover, repairing a damaged satellite relay. The sky above was full of cold stars. Then his scanner beeped. A fast-moving object entered the planet's atmosphere. It was hot, burning through the sky like a comet. He frowned and adjusted the scanner. The object was not a rock. It had a metal core and strange energy readings. The signal ended in a sharp spike. A crash. The impact point was less than 10 kilometers from his outpost. He hesitated for only a second. Curiosity and caution pushed him forward. He turned the rover toward the signal and drove into the forest. The trees grew taller and thicker the deeper he went. Branches scraped against the rover's sides. Soon, a faint glow appeared ahead. A trail of smoke rose into the night sky. Ethan slowed down and turned off the lights before the final bend. The crash site looked like something out of another world. A small craft lay broken among the trees. Blue light pulsed from its cracked hull. Strange symbols ran along its surface. Steam hissed from deep cuts in the metal. Then he saw her. A figure lay on the ground near the wreck. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her body was slender and strong, covered in torn armor that shimmered faintly. Silver hair spread out over the dirt, catching the light of the flames. Wolf-like ears twitched weakly on her head. A long, soft tail lay still beside her. She tried to lift her head. Golden eyes met his for the first time. There was pain in them, but also something else. She bared her teeth, a low growl escaping her throat. Then her body gave way and she fell silent. Ethan's mind raced. This could be dangerous. She was alien. Possibly armed. But she was also hurt, bleeding badly. He took a careful step closer. The sound of her shallow breathing reached his ears. He looked at the dark forest around him. The night felt heavier now. The shadows between the trees seemed alive. He knelt beside her and checked her pulse. It was faint, but still there. The wound on her side was deep. Her armor was fused to her skin in some places. She would not last long out here. Ethan made his choice. He slid his arms under her and lifted her gently. She was lighter than he expected. Her head rested against his chest as he carried her to the rover. The moment he placed her inside, something moved in the distance. It was quick. Too quick to be a human. The shape darted between the trees, tall and thin, with glowing red eyes. Ethan's heart pounded. He climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. The rover sped back toward the outpost. Branches whipped against the windshield. The injured girl stirred once, whispering something in a language he could not understand. Her voice was soft, almost musical, before fading again. Then it came. A howl, deep and unnatural, rolled through the forest. It was close. Too close. Ethan pushed the rover faster. The lights of the outpost appeared through the trees, a beacon in the dark. As they reached the gate, the security lights flared to life. The door slid open just enough for him to drive inside. The moment it closed, something heavy slammed against the outer wall. The metal shook. Then there was silence. Ethan sat still for a moment, breathing hard. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at the girl. She was unconscious again, her breathing shallow but steady. Her ears twitched once, as if she could still hear the sounds outside. The security cameras showed nothing now. The forest was empty. But Ethan knew something was still out there. Watching. Waiting. He lifted the girl once more and carried her to the medical room. The soft light there made her features clearer. Her skin was pale, her lips slightly parted as she breathed. The armor she wore looked advanced, far beyond human design. As he worked to treat her wounds, her golden eyes opened again. She looked straight at him, studying his face. Then, with a slow blink, she whispered the same strange word as before. Ethan did not understand it. But he felt the weight in her voice. He finished cleaning the wound and placed a blanket over her. She closed her eyes again, her breathing evening out. Outside, the valley was silent under the stars. But the silence now felt different. It felt like the pause before a storm. Ethan knew that whatever had followed them into the outpost was not gone. And if it came back, it would not come alone. Ethan barely slept that night. He kept checking the monitors. The forest outside the outpost was calm, but the memory of those glowing red eyes stayed in his mind. Each time the wind moved the trees, his hand went to the sidearm on the table. The girl slept in the medical room, her breathing slow and steady. At dawn, the first rays of light touched the mountains. Ethan made coffee and checked the vitals on the screen above her bed. Stable. When she finally opened her eyes, she did not seem afraid. She studied the room first, then him. Her golden gaze felt sharp, almost like she could read his thoughts. Ethan stepped closer. "Can you understand me?" he asked slowly. She tilted her head. Her ears moved slightly at the sound of his voice, but she gave no clear answer. Instead, she reached out and touched his wrist. Her fingers were warm. She said a single word again, the same one from last night. Her tone was softer this time, almost gentle. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know what that means." She frowned slightly, then winced from pain. He helped her sit up, propping a pillow behind her. She looked at him as if testing his strength, then accepted the water he offered. She sniffed it first, then drank carefully. Her tail moved slowly against the blanket, a faint sign of trust. Ethan made her some simple food from the supplies he had. She studied the plate as though deciding if it was safe. Finally, she took a bite. Then another. Hunger seemed to win over caution. While she ate, Ethan started working at his desk. He used the station's translation AI to process the sounds of her language. Every word she spoke was recorded. Slowly, patterns began to form. The girl watched him the whole time. Whenever he looked up, her golden eyes were already on him. Later, she tried to stand. Her legs trembled, and she gripped the bed frame for balance. Ethan was at her side instantly. She shook her head at his help but did not push him away. Step by step, she walked around the small room, her movements graceful despite the injury. She touched the walls, the shelves, the lights, as if learning his world. When night came, Ethan showed her to the spare room. It had a small bed, warm blankets, and a soft lamp. She looked inside, then at him. For a moment, she seemed to consider it. Instead, she followed him to his own quarters. Without a word, she sat on the floor beside his bed, curling up with her tail wrapped around herself. "You don't have to stay here," Ethan said quietly. She lifted her head and met his eyes. There was something firm in her expression, a quiet choice already made. She rested her head back down and closed her eyes. Through the night, the faint sound of her breathing was constant. Outside, the forest was still. But Ethan could not shake the feeling that she had placed herself there not just for comfort, but as a guard. By morning, the AI translator finally gave him a clue. The word she kept saying to him translated roughly as lifemate, or bonded one. Ethan stared at the screen. Lifemate? No, that can't be what she means, he muttered. When she woke, she smiled faintly, as if she had heard him. Ethan realized something then. He had saved her life, and in her culture, that meant something permanent. Something binding. The idea was strange. But the way she looked at him made it harder to dismiss. That afternoon, while Ethan checked the outer sensors, the alarms triggered for the first time since the crash. Unidentified movement, approaching from the west. The girl's ears shot up. She stepped to the window, her golden eyes narrowing. She said something sharp in her language, then looked at Ethan. The translator's voice was flat but clear. "They found me." The alarm kept beeping in the control room. Ethan leaned over the console, scanning the data. The movement on the west perimeter was fast, too fast for the wind to trigger the sensors. The girl stood beside him, her ears forward, tail low, her muscles tense. She spoke quickly in her language, pointing to the screen. The translator caught most of it. Vorik, hunters close. Ethan glanced at her. Hunters? You mean the ones who hurt you? She nodded once. Her golden eyes were sharp, like a predator's before the strike. She reached for the strange weapon lying near the wall. Ethan had removed it from her when he treated her wounds, unsure if it was safe. Now she held it with both hands, checking its power cell. The faint hum told him it was still working. Ethan's mind filled with questions. He turned on the translator mic. Who are the Vorik? Why are they here? Why were they chasing you? She hesitated. Her gaze dropped for a moment, then returned to his. She spoke slowly this time, so the translator could catch every word. My name is Lyra. I am Fenrir, warrior of the Silver Hunt. We protect our world. The Vorik came in darkness. They take our people. They sell them. They kill the rest. Ethan felt a cold weight in his chest. And you fought them? Lyra nodded. I led my pack. We fought many battles. But the Vorik are many. They burned our forests. Took my sisters. My ship was last. She looked at the floor now. Her voice was quieter. They shot us from the sky. I fell here. You found me. You saved me. Now we are bonded. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. Bonded? You mean like partners? Her ears twitched. She stepped closer. Lifemates. By our law. You carried me from death. My life is yours. Your life is mine. The words were simple, but there was something in her tone that made his heart beat faster. He opened his mouth to speak, but the outer alarm changed. The long, slow tone meant only one thing: multiple targets. Ethan checked the screen. 4 small ships were entering the atmosphere. Their heat signatures matched none of the civilian databases. Lyra didn't need the translator to understand. She bared her teeth. Vorik, she said again, the word heavy with hatred. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. If they're coming for you, they'll find us here. We need to leave. Lyra shook her head. Run, they follow. Kill them, they stop. Ethan stared at her. She was serious. More than serious. There was no fear in her eyes. Only the calm readiness of a hunter who had seen too many battles. He checked the station's defense systems. The perimeter turrets were still operational, but the outpost was never meant for heavy combat. Against 4 ships, it would not last long. Lyra stepped beside him and placed a hand on his arm. Ethan. You are human. You fight different. But you fight well. I saw you. He looked at her, confused. Saw me? I didn't fight anyone. She gave a small smile. You fought the forest to reach me. You fought the fear to carry me. That is the fight that matters first. Before he could answer, the long-range sensors detected landing signals. The Vorik were already here. Lyra moved toward the door, weapon in hand. Her tail swayed with a slow, deliberate rhythm. They think you are prey because you are alone. They do not know humans. Ethan felt something shift inside him. For the first time since this began, it wasn't just about protecting her because she was injured. It was about protecting her because she was his. The first Vorik scout drone appeared on the edge of the forest camera feed. Its red eyes glowed through the fog. Ethan shut down the outside lights. Then we show them. The forest outside was a dark wall. Mist rolled between the trees, glowing faintly under the station's faint perimeter lights. Somewhere out there, the Vorik scouts moved with quiet purpose. Ethan shut down the lights one by one, leaving the outpost in near darkness. Only the soft glow of his console remained. Lyra stood beside him, her weapon ready, her golden eyes almost shining in the dark. The first movement appeared on the screen. A drone. Small, fast, shaped like an insect with steel wings. It drifted low, scanning the ground. The red lens in its center swept left to right. Ethan's fingers moved quickly over the controls. He activated a trap he had set months ago for wild predators. A high-pitched charge burst from a hidden emitter. The drone froze midair, then fell to the ground, sparking. Lyra's tail flicked once in approval. Good. But there were more. 3 other drones appeared on the feed, moving in a wide arc. They were searching for a way in. Ethan moved to the outer hatch. Lyra followed, silent as shadow. They crouched by the window, watching the fog. A shape emerged between the trees. Taller than a human. Broad shoulders. Heavy armor. The Vorik warrior's helmet reflected a faint glint of light. He carried a long blade in one hand and a rifle in the other. Lyra's breathing slowed. Her posture shifted into something predatory. Ethan could feel the air change around her. The Vorik moved closer, scanning the outer walls. His red visor turned toward the hatch. Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. If we open fire now, they'll all come at once. Lyra nodded. Wait. Let them think you are weak. The Vorik tapped his helmet twice. More movement appeared in the mist. 2 others stepped into view. They spoke in a guttural language, their voices low and sharp. Ethan's heart was pounding. The station's metal walls felt too thin, the silence too heavy. He felt Lyra's hand brush his arm, steady and warm. They will test your walls, she whispered. Then they will break them. The first blow came without warning. A sudden impact shook the hatch. Metal groaned. Lyra was already moving. She opened a small side vent, slipped out like a shadow, and vanished into the mist. Ethan's gut clenched. He kept his eyes on the monitors, switching cameras to track her. She was fast. Almost invisible in the fog. She circled behind the nearest Vorik, then leapt. The fight was short and brutal. Her claws tore through the warrior's armor like it was soft leather. He hit the ground hard, weapon falling from his hand. The other 2 reacted instantly, firing into the fog. Lyra rolled away, using the fallen Vorik's body as cover. Sparks flew as energy blasts struck the armor. Ethan saw his chance. He remotely triggered one of the perimeter mines. A burst of light and sound ripped through the mist. The second Vorik fell, clutching his side. The third staggered but kept firing. Lyra closed the distance in 3 steps. Her weapon sliced across his chest plate. He dropped his rifle, falling backward into the shadows. The forest was silent again, except for the faint hum of her weapon and Ethan's rapid breathing. Lyra returned to the hatch, stepping inside without a word. She was spattered with dark blood, her expression calm. Her tail swayed slowly, the way a wolf's might after a clean kill. Ethan locked the hatch. That was only a scouting team, he said quietly. Lyra nodded. The pack will come. Soon. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. She was fierce, deadly, but there was also something unshakable in the way she stood at his side. She hadn't just fought to survive. She had fought to protect him. The comms panel beeped once. The orbital sensors picked up 2 larger ships entering low atmosphere. Lyra's voice was calm, almost too calm. The hunt begins. The warning lights turned red across the control panel. The 2 large Vorik ships were closing fast. Their landing trajectory pointed straight toward the valley. Ethan's stomach tightened. If they bring a full hunting party, the outpost won't hold. Lyra was already checking her weapon and the spare power cells he had laid out. Her ears twitched at the distant sound of engines cutting through the sky. They will burn this place, she said. We must move before they trap us. Ethan hesitated. The outpost was his home, his work, the last link to the human colonies. Leaving meant losing everything. But staying meant losing more. The engines grew louder. The ground trembled. Ethan made his choice. Grab what you can carry. We're leaving through the tunnel. Lyra didn't argue. She slung a small pack over her shoulder and followed him to the lower level. The tunnel was narrow, dug into the rocky soil years ago as an emergency escape. It led toward the far edge of the forest, where the terrain rose into steep hills. They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing in the dim light. Halfway through, a deep rumble shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere above them, The Vorik had landed. By the time they emerged into the forest, the night was alive with sound, metal footsteps, the hiss of weapons charging, and the growl of alien engines still cooling from descent. Ethan led the way, weaving through the trees. Lyra stayed close, her movements silent, her golden eyes scanning the dark. A sharp crack split the air. A tree beside Ethan exploded into splinters. He dropped low as a Vorik energy blast scorched the air above him. Lyra returned fire, her shot bright and fast. The blast hit the attacker's chest, sending him crashing backward into the ferns. But more shapes appeared between the trunks, 3 then 5, moving fast. "Keep going!" Ethan shouted. They ran deeper into the forest. The ground turned soft with moss, the air heavy with fog. Branches clawed at Ethan's arms, but he didn't slow. Lyra was always a step behind, covering him when the enemy fire came too close. They reached a narrow stream cutting through the valley. Ethan splashed across, hoping the water might confuse the Vorik's trackers. Lyra leapt lightly over the rocks, landing beside him without breaking stride. For a moment there was quiet. Only their breathing and the steady rush of water filled the air. Then a howl broke the silence. It was closer this time, so close Ethan could feel it in his bones. Lyra's ears flattened. "They call the pack," she said. Ethan didn't need the translator to understand the danger. They climbed the slope beyond the stream. The rain began, cold drops pattering against leaves and armor. The wet earth made the climb treacherous, but it also hid their tracks. Halfway up, Ethan slipped. His foot hit loose rock, and he started to slide. Before he could fall, Lyra caught his arm. Her grip was strong, her claws digging just enough to hold him. For a second, they locked eyes. Rain streaked her silver hair, and her breathing was quick, but her voice was steady. "I will not let you fall." She pulled him up, and they pressed on. At the top of the slope, the trees opened into a rocky ledge. Below, they could see the faint lights of the Vorik searching through the forest. The hunters moved in tight formation, their red visors sweeping the dark. Ethan crouched low. "We need cover. They'll spot us if we stay here." Lyra pointed toward a shadow in the cliff wall, a small overhang, hidden by vines. They squeezed inside. The stone was cold, but it shielded them from view. For the first time since they left the outpost, they could breathe without running. Ethan leaned against the rock, his chest heaving. Lyra sat close, her shoulder brushing his. Her tail curled around her legs, and her eyes stayed fixed on the forest below. "They will keep hunting," she said quietly. "But now they hunt both of us." Ethan looked at her, rainwater dripping from his hair. "Then we survive. Both of us." For a moment, the sound of the storm drowned out the danger. The warmth of her presence felt stronger than the cold wind. But in the distance, another howl rose, echoing off the mountains. The hunt was far from over. The storm had not stopped by morning. Cold rain swept across the mountains, turning every stone path into a slick hazard. Ethan and Lyra moved quickly along the ridge, keeping low to avoid the Vorik patrols below. In the distance, a dark shape rose from the mist, a forgotten mining station, built decades ago by early human settlers. Its towers were broken, and its power lines hung like dead vines. Ethan studied it through the binoculars. "If the core is still intact, we can power the defense turrets. It might give us a chance." Lyra's tail flicked once. "Then we fight there." They reached the station by midday. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and rust, but the main generator was still in place. Ethan's hands moved fast over the controls, reconnecting circuits, overriding safeties. The deep hum of old machinery slowly came to life. On the roof, Lyra set up the turrets. She moved with practiced precision, her claws tapping against the metal as she tightened bolts and checked energy feeds. The moment the first turret powered on, it gave a low whine, then swiveled toward the valley. Through the fog, movement appeared. The Vorik were climbing the slope in formation. Their red visors glowed like distant embers. Ethan's voice was calm, but inside, his heart was pounding. "They're coming fast. 40, Maybe 50. Lyra stepped down from the turret platform. Rain slicked her silver hair against her armor. She looked at him for a long moment. Stay close to me. If you fall, I fall. The first Vorik reached the base of the station. Energy blasts lit the mist in sharp flashes. Ethan triggered the turrets. The heavy guns roared, sending streams of fire into the advancing hunters. Several Vorik fell, but the rest pushed forward, using fallen debris as cover. Lyra was already in motion. She leapt from the platform, landing among them like a silver strike of lightning. Her weapon sliced through armor, her claws finding the weak points. Every movement was fluid, deadly, beautiful in its precision. Ethan stayed on the upper level, using his engineering knowledge to turn the station itself into a weapon. He rerouted the mining rig's railgun to face the valley. The system wasn't designed for combat, but at full charge it could punch through a ship's hull. A Vorik grenade exploded against the outer wall. The shockwave nearly knocked him down. Through the smoke, he saw Lyra stagger, a burn mark across her shoulder. Something inside Ethan snapped. He grabbed the manual railgun trigger and fired. The shot tore through the mist, slamming into the lead Vorik dropship. The explosion was bright and loud, echoing through the mountains. The sight of their burning ships slowed the Vorik advance. Lyra used the moment to cut down the last of the ground attackers. The rain washed streaks of dark blood from her armor. For a few seconds there was silence except for the hum of the generator. Then the second dropship began to rise, trying to escape. Ethan adjusted the railgun's aim. Not today! The second shot hit the dropship midair. Fire and metal rained down into the valley. The Vorik were gone. Ethan rushed down to the lower level. Lyra was kneeling, breathing hard. Her wound was deep, but her eyes were steady. When he reached her, she gave a small smile. You fight like Fenrir, she said softly. Ethan helped her stand, one arm around her. No. I fight like human. But we win because we fight together. She leaned into him slightly as they walked back inside. The storm was already fading, and a thin line of sunlight broke through the clouds. For the first time since the crash, the valley was quiet. Truly quiet. Lyra's voice was almost a whisper. The hunt is over, for now. The rain stopped by the next morning. Mist still clung to the mountains, but the sky above was clear and bright. Sunlight spilled into the valley, turning the wet leaves into 1,000 tiny mirrors. Ethan stood at the edge of the mining station's balcony. The air was fresh after the storm, and the silence felt deeper than before. No engines. No howls. No red eyes watching from the trees. Behind him, the sound of soft footsteps approached. Lyra stepped into the sunlight, wearing a fresh bandage over her shoulder. Her silver hair caught the light, and her golden eyes were calm. She stopped beside him, resting both hands on the railing. It is strange. No scent of the hunt. No blood in the wind. Ethan glanced at her. You mean peace? She tilted her head. Peace. Yes. But it never stays long. For a while, they stood together in silence. The valley stretched out before them, green and endless. The broken Vorik ship still smoked in the distance, but the sight no longer carried fear. Lyra turned to him. When I fell from the sky, I thought my hunt was over. I thought my life would end in the dirt. Ethan shook his head. You're still here. Because you carried me, she said softly. Because you chose to fight. Her tail brushed lightly against his leg. The touch was deliberate, warm, and strangely comforting. Ethan looked out over the horizon again. So what happens now? Lyra stepped closer, close enough that he could feel her presence, strong and steady. Now, I stay. I protect my life mate. Until the stars call us to hunt again. He smiled faintly. You're really not going to let that lifemate thing go, are you? Her eyes glimmered in the light. No. You are mine now. And I am yours. Ethan didn't argue this time. Instead, he rested his hand on hers. They stayed like that for a long moment, listening to the soft rustle of the forest below. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called. Life was still here. The world kept turning. But Ethan knew the quiet wouldn't last forever. Out there, beyond the mountains and the stars, more dangers waited. The Vorik would not forget their defeat. And when they came again, he would be ready. Not alone. Never alone. Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice low and certain. The next hunt will come. And when it does, they will learn again what it means to face us. The sun climbed higher. The light warmed their faces. For now, the storm had passed. And for now, they were safe. Together.